Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mortgage Coach Tuesday coaching call. Every Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock Pacific, we're here to connect as a community. My name is Dave Savage. I am the CEO of Mortgage Coach, and we are totally dedicated to your personal and your professional success. The foundation of Mortgage Coach is founded in our principles, our values of wow. How do we systematically exceed people's expectations with a wow? Simplicity and excellence. Now that's all driven in the mortgage space to total cost transparency and delivering a modern mortgage experience. And at the end of the day, it's about helping you guys deliver confident decisions to home buyers and realtors. Today's call, like every call, will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel within the hour. You could go to our YouTube channel if you don't already like it, so that every time something gets posted, you get it. Our special guest today, I'm really excited about because I've read this book 2 times prior to preparing for the interview, and now I've studied it a little bit more for this conversation. But Carmine Gallo, welcome to the call today.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Thanks for inviting me. I like the picture you have of me up there. It looks like I'm actually speaking in front of people. You know, that was just taken in my office.
Well, it's a good picture, and it looks like you've got a professional film crew in your office.
No, that's great. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, that was actually at Le Web, which was in Paris. So I tried communicating these concepts to the French. That was interesting. But that's another day.
Well, today you're going to be communicating them to the mortgage professionals and realtors. So well, we're not French. We're more like the Italians, but it'll give you a new twist.
I like that. Passionate, like the Italians.
There you go. There you go. So Carmine travels a lot. He has consulted and spoke and trained some of the best companies in the not the industry, on the planet. So it's going to be a great call. You know, I want everybody to think of the focus of this call, something I've been talking about now for weeks, is a modern mortgage experience, and Carmine brings a new dynamic, makes a tremendous case why to really maximize success, we need to deliver a multi-sensory experience. Before I bring Carmine in, I want to connect the dots to some things that are very relevant in our industry. And part of the reason why Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, and some of these companies that are bringing unprecedented transparency and are also bringing unprecedented multi-sensory experiences via mobile are so successful for realtors and such an opportunity as mortgage professionals. So a couple key concepts. You know, one, while I just shouted out 3 of the big dogs, you know, there's never been more confusion and there's never been more transparency for home buyers and realtors, which creates an opportunity. Another key trend is that from a demographic, there's a new generation of home buyers, and we all know that over the next 5 years, millennials are going to be the biggest opportunity in home buying. What I don't think everybody pays close enough attention is it's not just 5 years from now. It's over the next 12 months, over 50% of home buyers are going to be under the age of 44, and 32% are under the age of 34. So as an industry of mortgage professionals and as mortgage coaches on this call, we need to get smart. We need to get, you know, not just smart, but execute around this insight. One more piece of insight before we bring Carmine in is the research that I have talked about now at least 3 times on coaching calls. But, you know, what I've learned is that sometimes if you really want things to get ingrained, you got to repeat it. A key takeaway from this research from NAR and Google is that home buyers and sellers, they want video. They want to hear advice. They want to see advice. They want a multimedia experience. So everybody wants that, but still only 15% of agents, realtors, are delivering that. And when you look at most loan officers, it's even a small percentage. I would say it's under 10% of mortgage professionals are leveraging video. So when I think of these opportunities, and I also think of the challenge that we're not doing, I'm like, what are the guests I could bring in to really crush it for you mortgage coaches so that everybody on this call has a competitive advantage against every other loan officer in the industry? You know, how can you bring more value to realtors? How can you bring more value to home buyers? How can you educate them in a way that's attractive to millennials? So a fantastic guest, Carmine. Carmine, by the way, I read your first book, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. How long ago did you write that one?
That was about 3 years ago, yeah.
So 2 amazing books in a pretty short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the Talk Like TED book, which just came out in March and debuted as a Wall Street Journal bestseller. So we're really, really proud of it.
Well, it's a fantastic book, and it's getting a lot of buzz in our industry. I know you not only speak to a lot of big companies, you recently did some training for Keller Williams. If you could, one, give us a little bit about your backstory, and then let's tie that into why you wrote Talk Like TED, and then let's get into what can we learn that's valuable as mortgage professionals.
Yeah, I'll keep the backstory short. I'll just kind of speed up to where I am. I'm a communication coach, so I work with executives from some of the world's great brands, Coca-Cola, Chevron, Intel, LinkedIn, many, many other companies. And Keller Williams, for example, I was brought in just last week. I visited Austin, where they're headquartered, to work with the trainers, people who are agents but who are also master faculty, certified trainers for Keller Williams. And what amazed me is that there were some people in that audience, many people, who have been training for decades, like 25 years or more, as trainers, not just at Keller Williams, but other real estate firms, and they still had a lot to learn. They were very receptive. Great communicators are very receptive at learning something new. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to, help with this modern mortgage experience and help people with their video presence, and also creating better experiences when they communicate their values and the information that they have to their clients.
Well, one thing for sure, and especially in our industry, we all know that it is a multimedia generation. I know you have some slides to share. Before I pass that off to you, why Talk Like TED? What was the reason that you really focused around TED? And then let's get into some of the things that you've learned that are in the book and that you think are valuable.
Okay, TED is interesting, and just like the slide that you have up there says, TED presentations have been viewed online more than 1 billion times. TED Talks, which many of your people know, whether they watch them or not, they have heard of TED Talks. They're streamed up to 2 million times per day. So I like to say, whether you like it or not, your presentations are being compared to a TED-style presentation because people are familiar with it. It's new, it's fresh, it's engaging, it's interesting. And then they go to your typical, whether it's an agent or whether it's an executive delivering a presentation of some sort, and those presentations in far too many cases are kind of dry and boring and long, and they're just not as engaging. So what can we learn from the greatest communicators? People, for example, who speak at TED. It's not about the TED conference. It's about what can we learn from some of these communicators who have shared that stage.
Well, Carmine, I have passed the screen to you, and I would love to walk through what did you learn, what should we know to net it out, and my goal is that, one, we get takeaways from this call, and two, everybody on this call is motivated to read your book a couple times and take action. It would just make our industry better.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm going to give you some very specific takeaways that we can use, that you can use today in your very next client call or your very next client meeting. Can you see my screen there with this funny picture of Steve Jobs?
It's all about passion, and we see it perfectly.
It is all about passion. In my career as a business journalist and as a communication coach, 25 years now, I have never met anyone who is a great communicator who is not abundantly passionate about what they do. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are going to say, oh, yeah, passion, yeah, we get it. No, I don't think you do. Passion means that you have to dig deep to identify what it is about the service that you provide that you're really excited about, that you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to share it. Steve Jobs wore passion on his sleeve. He used the word passion all the time. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what gets me excited. This is what makes my heart sing. He used that as a quote once. This is what makes my heart sing. You need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm passionate about? And it goes beyond the product or the service. Steve Jobs was not passionate about computers. He was passionate about tools to help you unleash your personal creativity. Dave, I know in the time that we've had together, the relationship that we've built, that you are very passionate about helping people restructure their debt and getting into debt in much more empowering ways. So I know that about you just through our conversation. Dave, I hope you see what I mean, that it's not just, hey, I'm excited to be here. Oh, this is so cool. I can't wait to show you what I have. That's not what passion is. Passion is asking yourself before a client meeting, what is it that I'm really excited about? Why and how can I share my passion with those clients in the way I communicate the vision behind my brand?
So Mortgage Coach members, this is, I think, just reaffirms one of the things that we talk about so often is to be clear on your why. You know, what really is unique, what's different, why are you a loan officer? You're on today's call. Why are you a mortgage coach? You know, why have you decided to strike out and be differently? And, you know, whenever I talk to loan officers that are incredibly successful and I ask them, you know, what's your why? I get a passionate, clear, really meaningful answer. And when I ask the mortgage coaches, why are you, and, you know, they're just not as successful, or they're not using our tools as successfully, I get a really different answer. So I think you just validated that.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing. I like the question that you ask, you know, be clear on your why. And I don't think a lot of people are clear on their why. And so that becomes very important. There are three components that all presentations that connect with people in a very powerful way, they all share three components. Every pitch, every presentation, when you if you're a loan officer sitting across from a client, you're showing them the loan options, for example. It needs to be, that conversation needs to be understandable, and of course, by bringing in these multimedia tools, it helps them understand. So it needs to be understandable. It needs to be memorable. I'm going to give you very specific techniques that you can use today to make your language more memorable. And finally, it has to be emotional. And this, Dave, we just talked about this whole idea of getting to the why. That's part of it. People underestimate the role of emotion and what emotion plays in creating an inspiring conversation. And that is the goal, to inspire your clients. Inspiration doesn't mean, you know, Steve Jobs in front of thousands of people. Inspiration can simply mean I'm getting excited about working with you and about taking the next step. So let me talk through some concepts. I have a few slides here that are kind of fun. Most of these are, you know, images and placeholders, but they reinforce the concepts that I'm going to go over. The first concept that works really, really well in making your conversation both understandable and memorable is starting with the meaning, the big picture, before filling in the details. So if you have been reviewing your client's finances, for example, or you've come up with a loan statement, what is the big picture? What is the big picture before giving them the details? The brain craves meaning before detail. I learned this from a guy named John Medina, who's a neuroscientist. And he said, Carmine, the brain evolved in a way that it has to process big picture. So when primitive man ran into a tiger, he did not ask, how many teeth does the tiger have? He asked, will it eat me? Should I run? Big picture before details. So think about how that applies to a product, a service, a firm, a company, when you're pitching yourself, or when you're engaging in a conversation about something very specific. Let me give you an example of how Steve Jobs did this. Sometimes examples work the best. 2008, Steve Jobs introduces the MacBook Air. Many people on this call probably have one. MacBook Air. This is a typical like a presentation slide. I think most people would do something like this. We're really excited to introduce a thin, lightweight notebook computer, 13-inch widescreen display, backlit keyboard, Intel processor. Wow, a lot of stuff. It's not very visual, and there's just a lot of details here. What's the big picture? Oh, it's the world's thinnest notebook. Well, that's far more interesting, and it gives me the big picture. Now I can ask questions. Why is it? How did you get it so thin? How thin is it? What do I compromise? But I can see the big picture before details. And one way of, here's a little persuasion trick. These are actual words you can use. If you tell somebody, the one thing I want you to remember is this, that's what they'll remember. That's what they'll write down. Here's an example. John Chambers, Cisco Systems CEO, brilliant speaker, by the way, awesome communicator. I was watching him at CES, which is a big consumer electronics show this year. And he said, if there's one number I want you to take away from this keynote, which was about an hour, if there's one number I want you to take away, it's 19 trillion. He said, what we're talking about is a $19 trillion opportunity. Trillion. Take a look at this. These are actual blog posts and headlines. They all say pretty much the same thing. Why? Because John Chambers told you what to remember. He told you what to write. This is a persuasion trick that works really, really well. So we can think about that, Dave, in terms of the mortgage business and the mortgage loan business. When you are in front of a client, I really think, and I'm sure you agree with me, Dave, give them the big picture before maybe going into the program or the tablet or your mobile app and showing them all the details of their loan. Give them the big picture first. Well, what do you think of that approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are, first of all, they're coming to you for insight. Yes, they want information, but they want you to net it out for them. So, you know, one of the things we teach loan officers is to help people. At the end of the day, they want to get into a home, and most people want to become debt-free. They want to become financially free. So when you can net it out, here's a loan. You can talk about the total cost over time, the big picture value. Again, some folks don't even want you to net it out in too much detail, and some people want you to peel back the onion and get into details. So, one, I couldn't agree more. By the way, I would say one of the problems we have in our industry is that so many loan officers, that's what they do when they're trying to win a loan. It's all about the details. They start with a fee worksheet. They start with a long list of numbers that looks a lot like what you get when you're buying a car, or pretty much any invoice you would get in life. And they don't start with the big picture. They don't put it in pictures and graphs, and then drive people into the details. So what you said aligns with what we teach, and I would also say that 90% of the people in our industry, they live in the details. They start in the details and they stay in the details.
You got to get out of the weeds. You got to get out of the weeds. You can get into the weeds once you've set up the conversation for me. But if you start in the weeds, then I'm lost. And remember, you folks, everyone on the line, you're talking about, you use jargon and language that 99% of people don't quite understand. So you really need to give me the big picture. You know, financial freedom at this age, you know, or this is how much I'll be saving, you know, per month.
Over 5, well, by the way, and the savings over 5 years is a bigger number than the savings over 1 month. So blow it up and then peel it back into the details based off of how detailed that client wants to get.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, I have found a way to save XYZ over 5 years. And here's how we're going to do it. Oh, okay, great. Teach me more. You know, but now I know where you're heading. Good. And as you fill in the details, make sure you're constantly selling the benefit. Nobody cares about the details. They're always asking themselves, how does this mean? I learned this in Journalism 101. First day of journalism, you know, whenever you write something, it always has to answer the question, so what? So there's different ways of applying this. You can ask yourself, well, so what, or what does it mean to you, or sell the benefit. It's all saying the same thing. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Their main question is, how is this going to improve my life? Now, when they're asking themselves, why should I care, we do this all the time when I work for companies like Intel, for example, which is very engineering-driven, a lot of details. They can come out with a computer chip, and an engineer once explained this particular chip to me this way. He said, Carmine, this is our new dual-core chip. It has 2 performance engines that simultaneously process data at a faster rate. And you know, once I picked my jaw up off the ground, I thought, well, I asked the engineer, I said, can you explain that to me in plain English? Let's try this. Why should I care? Oh, well, Carmine, you should care because your computers will be faster, better graphics and video, and you'll have longer battery life. Oh, okay. Well, now I'm much more interested. I didn't want to buy the first definition. The second definition applies to my life. So every step of the way, you need to be asking the question, why should my audience care about what I just said? If that's all you do is think to yourself, okay, I've just given them a concept or one component of my conversation, one big idea, or I've shown them something, the very next sentence should be, and here's why you should care. And in fact, use that every once in a while. Use that sentence. Here's why you should care. Or here's how it will improve your life. You know, you got to really connect the dots, especially, Dave, in an industry like yours, where people are just very confused about the language you folks use.
Well, not only are they confused, but most borrowers look at it as a loan officer or a mortgage professional as a commodity. You know, I'm buying money from you. What's your rate and what are your costs? And so one of the things that we teach, and I think it's critical to really differentiating, is to always show a comparison. Average loan officers quote a program. A mortgage coach loan officer provides a comparison so that, one, whatever you're showing, it's different. You're helping people look at options, so you're providing a greater level of transparency, and one of those options is going to be better suited for their needs. So now you're delivering something of value. It's got contrast. So again, a lot of loan officers, 90% of loan officers in America, they quote rates. Mortgage coaches on this call, they provide options and help people make confident decisions. So I think it really aligns well with, what the apex players in our space do. Really key takeaway.
That is really interesting. So in terms of why should my audience care, what you're suggesting is why should my audience care about the offer that I am providing, okay? It's not just, you need to make sure that they don't leave thinking you're just a commodity. So why should they care about the difference between me and just any other loan officer? Yeah, that's a good point. Right.
Yeah.
Here's another trick, and I call them. I guess maybe I shouldn't call them tricks. I don't want to sound like we're manipulating people, but they do work in terms of persuasion really, really well. Here's the beauty: the rule of three. Rule of three works really, really well. The rule of three simply means that in short-term memory, people can only carry about 3 big chunks of information. So if you have a short conversation with a person, look, nobody wants to sit there and go through the details of their loan on a first sitting for, 2 hours. You have a short conversation. You're trying to show them the results of and how much money you could save them. And you're differentiating yourself, right? Give them 3 reasons why this is, it's a better option to do business with you. Don't give them 28. Give them 3. 3 pervades every aspect of our society. But let me give you some examples. Steve Jobs was excellent at this. Always featured like 3 benefits of a new product. He didn't go into 100 benefits. He always focused on 3. This is an actual screenshot from the Twitter IPO. When Twitter went IPO last year and they were pitching themselves to investors, there's the CEO, Dick Costolo. There's 3 reasons to invest in Twitter, not 32. 3. Here's a blow-up screenshot. Look how simple it is, by the way, too. Very simple. Bill Gates is studying this. Bill Gates is doing a much better job of communicating complex ideas. And it was interesting, earlier this year he released a newsletter, and the newsletter's title really was 3 Myths of Poverty. 3 myths about poverty. And these are just some of the headlines. 3, 3, 3. People cannot ignore lists. If you give someone a list of 3 and you say there are 3 things you're going to learn today, there are 3 benefits to this loan or 3 features I'd like to share with you, they'll write it down. They will write it down and they will want to know what all 3 are. So what are my 3 key or supporting messages, examples, or stories? I think that resonates with the audience too, Dave. I think it's very important actually, especially when you're having short conversations.
Absolutely. In our space, I will say too much information is just as dangerous as too little information. You want to get it right. So spending, in our business, more than an hour with someone is too long, and less than 15 minutes isn't enough. And when you I guess I would ask everybody, every mortgage coach on this, really start thinking about how much time did you spend listening, asking questions and listening, and then how much time did you spend presenting? And be very intentional that you've asked great questions so that now when you present options to help them make a confident decision, you know, it's tailored to what's important to them, and you net it out quickly and concisely, and great takeaway, and do it in groups of threes.
Yeah, yeah. And if you only have those 15 minutes, really focus on, you know, the three key messages you want to leave them with. And go ahead at the end of the conversation, remind them. So here's 3 things you need to know about this loan. It just makes for an easier conversation. I like that, though. 15 minutes to an hour sounds about right. Sounds good. And we're going to talk about how long you should talk in just a minute. I want to touch on this real quick. Bring numbers to life, because obviously loan officers have a lot of data and numbers. You cannot overwhelm people with numbers. Apple is really good at this. Apple, what they do, not just Steve Jobs, but what they do today, Apple, whenever they have numbers, they always put the numbers into context. And I've noticed with some of the tools that you use or that you provide, Dave, it seems like there's a way to highlight the important numbers. So maybe that's the way you put it into context. And I want to ask you that when I'm done here. But for example, when Apple delivers like the data or the statistics behind something, they always make it relevant. So for example, I remember when Phil Schiller introduced the iPad mini, I think 2 years ago now. And the iPad mini, I forgot how thin it was. He delivered all the data, and then he said, but essentially what that means, it's as thin as a pencil, and it's as light as a pad of paper. So in other words, he gave you all the data, and then he said, but here, let me put it into context for you. That's a really good way of bringing numbers to life. So ask yourself, if there is a key statistic, number, how do I bring that to life? How do I make that relevant to my client or audience? Dave, I think some of the tools, I mean, again, I'm not a loan officer, but I understand communications, and I think some of the tools that I've seen from you have ways, especially on even delivering them on a mobile device, brings them to life rather than just sending someone an Excel sheet with a bunch of numbers on it.
Absolutely. I mean, we're passionate about making it simple and educating in a you know, what I would call a modern way.
Yeah. Just don't overload people with too many numbers, and focus on those ones that are the most relevant to them, and then put it into perspective. And the simple way is, here's how much this number is going to save you over 5 years. That's putting it into context, for example. Okay, Dave, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask the audience a question. This is rhetorical because I can't hear anybody, but it's rhetorical. How long do you think it takes for the average person to start doing this during any presentation? This is that falling asleep, when they start dozing off or being distracted. They're checking their watch. You know, you're talking to them about the phone, and they start checking their watch. They start thinking about what they're going to have for dinner. When does that occur? Neuroscientists are finding that it's starting to occur after about 10 minutes. This is why I call it the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule simply means that if people are going to start losing attention in about 10 minutes, you have to find a way to bring them back. You have to build in what are called soft breaks. That doesn't mean, okay, it's been 10 minutes, we're going to take a bathroom break. Okay, everybody, come back in 5 minutes. That's not what it means. Soft break means I'm going to break up this conversation to re-engage you. There's a number of ways we can do that. One, we could start telling stories using case studies, examples. I like the fact that some of your tools use video. So that's one way. Video is one way of breaking things up with stories. A remarkable thing happens to your brain on stories. Research out of Princeton University is finding that if I tell you a story, the same areas of our brain light up. That means we're literally in sync. We connect with each other. Sheryl Sandberg launched an entire movement called Lean In, and she launched that movement based on stories. She gave a very popular TED Talk, and this gets back to my book, Talk Like TED, which is where I did the research on storytelling, Sheryl Sandberg gave a TED Talk. It was it was only about 10 minutes, actually, on women in the workplace. She admitted recently that she was going to deliver a talk that was just full of data and numbers and statistics. Instead, a friend of hers encouraged her to start telling the stories of her own experience, her own journey with being a working mother. And that TED Talk, if you go to TED.com, you can see it. It has millions of views, and it launched an entire movement called Lean In. But that doesn't happen unless you're personal. So find ways of personalizing it a little bit. Let people in. Let them know a little bit about you. In the research that I did for the TED book, I found that 65% of content of some of the best TED Talks fell under what Aristotle would call pathos, which is emotion, storytelling, connecting with people on a much more meaningful emotional level. 25% data, only 10% what Aristotle would call ethos or establishing credibility. You know, Dave, I don't think this is a bad template for loan officers, because I'll bet most of them, when they're presenting data or when they're presenting the information behind a loan to a client, 99% is probably logos, you know, the data, the numbers, the statistics. Maybe balance that out a little bit. Why don't you try to make it a little bit more emotional? And how do we do that? Well, one is storytelling. Two is video. Certainly the stories are very, very important. But also creating, what Dave suggested at the beginning, these multisensory type of experiences. I love this picture of Steve Jobs when he introduced the iPad. Some of you might forget, but he said the iPad, when he first introduced it, he said the iPad is this great cross between a notebook and a smartphone. It's more powerful than a smartphone, but it's more intimate than a laptop. So where is he sitting in? He's sitting on a couch, and on the stage looked like a living room. So in other words, he actually brought the device to life. This was the brilliance of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs did not just introduce a product. He actually surrounded that product with the environment in which that product would be used in. I mean, that was just brilliant. He took presentations to another level. But he was thinking about, see, everything in this picture tells the story. It tells the story of the product, how will you be using the product. But he goes away from the slides. He goes away from the deck. And I know many of you use PowerPoint or Apple Keynote, which Steve Jobs used, or Prezi or whatever. It doesn't matter how you're presenting it in terms of just that flat screen. You got to go beyond those slides. You have to go beyond the paperwork. How do you do that? That's where I think the power of mobility comes in. That's where I think the power of video comes in. The ability to actually take an iPad and start manipulating it and touching it and feeling it, and having people manipulate it, that gets people so much more engaged than simply staring at a computer screen and watching something. When people have these multisensory experiences, it releases dopamine into the system, which really acts as a powerful mental save button. So you need to ask yourself, what multisensory experience can I build into my next presentation? When I say presentation, by the way, it doesn't mean a PowerPoint. It means I am presenting information to you. And this is pretty much where I'm going to wrap. I've just got one more thing to say after this, but I want to pick up on this because this is probably the most important thing we're going to talk about. Dave, this is where I think that your loan office can really stand out, by creating these multisensory experiences that go beyond just, here's the information, let's take a look at it on paper. Let me pass the paper over to you, and now we're going to look at it.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a place where, as an industry, we fall very short. What I'd like to do now is, first of all, kind of riff with you a little bit, Carmine, if you can confirm that you can see my screen now. I'm going to give you guys a couple opportunities to connect with Carmine. His website.
Dave, did you take your screen back?
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
I probably will. Hold on. Yep, got it. Okay, thanks.
Good. So folks, make sure you connect with Carmine as a mortgage professionals, one, we need to improve our communication skills. Just quoting rates is not the way to win the trust and respect. It's not the way to deliver the most value to a home buyer, and it's certainly not the way to get the most referrals from a realtor. So I'm going to get pretty tactical here over the next 10, 15 minutes, and Carmine and I are going to riff together and really make this a teaching for mortgage professionals. Also, Carmine, I want to make sure for any loan officers that want to purchase your book to pass out to their realtors, obviously going to Amazon is a great way to get one copy, but if they want to get, a lot of copies to pass out to real estate agents, how would they do that?
We have found the best source is 800 CEO Read. So if you go to 800ceoread.com, if you're ordering more than, say, 5 books, it's very good because they package everything in bulk and they send it wherever you want it to go. And it's a pretty good discount. It's a pretty steep discount. 800 CEO Read for bulk orders of Talk Like Ted. Or wherever books are sold, and it's always fun getting tweets. I get tweets every day from people around the world who are seeing the book in different places, so it's a lot of fun.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's make this very specific to mortgage coaches. Everybody on this call pays to be a mortgage coach, or your company does. So be clear. What we're about is delivering a modern mortgage experience, which is a multi-sensory experience, and that is what we do. We create apps. So just doing some takeaways from the call today. Your passion. I ask everybody on this call to rate yourself candidly that when you're communicating with buyers and agents, how passionate do you think that you are? And by the way, it's not how passionate you think you are, it's how passionate people perceive you. So really ask yourself that question. By the way, ask some people around you. Really get clear on this, because at the end of the day, we're going to give you some tactics to communicate better, but if that energy that you have and that passion that you have is not where it needs to be, we'll probably make you better, but you're not going to really get everything from this call. So, it starts with passion. I think when I think of the prep I put into this call and what I've learned from reading Carmine's book several times now and listening to this interview is that, pictures mean more than words, and your research, Carmine, is just fantastic. Information is, we remember 10% of that, but when it becomes a picture, when it becomes a multi-sensory experience, we retain more. And Carmine, I have a question coming up because, you put a challenge out, create multi-sensory experiences. What are you going to do in your next presentation? So I actually, when I was preparing, I went to your book. By the way, I pulled about, I could just spend the rest of this call kind of going from quotes that I pulled because there's so many great ones. But you make a great case for, you need to see it. You make a great case for hearing it. By the way, is there any science or evidence the difference between just hearing and a video where you're hearing and seeing it at the same time? Because one challenge we have with Mortgage Coach members is we give them the ability to either add a voice message to a Mortgage Coach experience or add a video. And we always make the case that, hey, the video is better. Do you have any science that would put competing with audio versus video, what would be the difference in impact? Any science on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge impact. I didn't go into video that much, and I'll tell you why. Okay, in the book, I went into pictures because just getting somebody from the step of all just data to actually adding images to that data, that's a huge step for most people. You're taking, you're taking Mortgage Coach folks to the next level, which is video, which is great. Video is so much more impactful, so much more powerful. And I've forgotten the statistics of how much video is uploaded to YouTube. There's statistics at Facebook of how much more video is more engaging. So yeah, if you're not into video, look, let all the other loan officers or the other realtors who don't use video, let them be left out, right? I mean, you are the folks who need to go to that next step. If you're using video, you're way advanced than most people. So video is very, very powerful. And yeah, there is evidence actually. Forgot if I go into it in this book or if it was the Steve Jobs book. There's great evidence from venture capital clubs. Venture capital clubs have done some pretty good science research where they give people a pitch, like on paper, right? And then that pitch is rated. How good is this investment? Should I invest in it or not? And then they have people listen to the audio of the people reading essentially the pitch, and then they have the video, the audio, and the pitch. And obviously the third one is so much more impactful than just reading the pitch. So yeah, absolutely, video is very powerful.
So think about it and then feel it. And when you think of the amount of millennials that are coming into our market, we need to give them a multisensory experience. The concept of mobile and video leadership for mortgage professionals, it's never been more important. It's never been more valuable. Keller Williams is bringing in Carmine to train their organization. Keller Williams is building apps. They're putting media around this. So guys, Mortgage Coach members, you have this. You have a choice. When you present mortgage options to buyers, borrowers, and realtors, are you going to give them text only, or are you going to give them a multi-sensory experience? So, I want to make this point because everybody on this call, you're a mortgage coach. But are you doing it with each and every client? Are you still doing the same thing that you did back in the 90s? So just kind of bringing it through to a training, this is a multi-sensory experience in a real estate office. And by the way, it would have been even better if Jeremy would have handed the two buyers an iPad or actually asked them to pull out their own mobile devices so that while he was showing something, they were interacting with it. I would just make the argument that when you deliver information advice and the client interacts with the device, they pinch, they zoom, they see the numbers, they're going to, one, retain it better, and two, it's going to be a better educational experience. Do you agree with that, Carmine?
Dave, the photograph you just showed is everything. I think that's what I mean by multisensory. If you could actually get people to see and touch and feel the numbers, wow, that's pretty cool. You know what that reminds me of? I'm not here to push books, but but I wrote a book called The Apple Experience, which was just about the Apple retail stores. That was the whole point of making sure that all the devices worked. In 2001, if you walked into an electronics store, devices weren't turned on. The Apple Store did something different where everything was connected to the internet, so you could actually pick up the device and touch it and feel it and play with it. That connects you so much more to the content. So they knew that in 2001, right? Okay, so mortgage loan officers, this is the type of thing that you got to start thinking about.
Yeah, and when you think of delivering value to everybody, you put the realtor in the loop, and now the realtor feels it, touches it. They hear and watch you delivering value and advice. So folks, I mean, to say this is a differentiator is an understatement. We are at Mortgage Coach, and you guys on this call, we are revolutionizing how consumers, how people make financial decisions. Financial planners don't have this tool. CPAs don't have this tool. No one in the financial industry has it. So as a community in the mortgage space, we are revolutionizing the way people are educated around financial literacy. And again, it's getting to the point where it's just not a great opportunity with millennials. They just plain old expect this. They want this kind of information advice. So I'm showing you screenshots of our Rate Watch app that is coming out within weeks. And so when you think of Mortgage Coach, it really is a multi-sensory wow. Stop going from just text and start delivering something valuable. So one more thing I want to do, and Carmine, feel free to jump in. We're going to be doing a webinar with Steve Harney this Thursday. So 11 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time this Thursday. It's going to be all about open houses. And so this is another thing that I think really aligns to what you've taught us today, Carmine, is that it's great when someone comes into a real estate office or you're talking on the phone and the internet, but a lot of people are going out to open houses, and they're really missing out. They go out to an open house, and by the way, this is a picture of how finance flyers and the real estate flyers were positioned in an open house.
Right.
By the way, I mean, this is familiar to everybody, right? I mean, Carmine, you've been to open houses. This is what it looks like?
Yeah, this is great. I'm really curious because as the outsider, to me, isn't an open house an open house?
Yeah. So by the way, this is what it could have looked like. it could have had a device, and literally I could have presented mortgage options, and with some of Mortgage Coach's strategies, even more value for realtors with the home. And I could have actually had the buyer picked it up while I tell them a story around how financial strategies are helping them buy homes. I mean, if it was a first-time home buyer property, I could have been telling a story around first-time home buyers. So that literally, while I'm talking to them, the device is moving. And they are, they're having a multisensory experience of numbers, of pictures, graphs, and then I could actually just click a button and share it with them. So really easily, really simple, share it. So by the way, everybody who's on this call and you're a Mortgage Coach member, pull out your Mortgage Coach, pull out your device, go to the Mortgage Coach app, click on Summary. I want you guys to just feel this yourselves. Click on Summary, pinch into the numbers, then you go down to the breakdown. Again, people can stay as high level as they want, or they can really go down into the details. Again, click on the graphic image, and then everybody swipe it back. Again, just 4 fingers, swipe it back to the front, and then click the button in the top left-hand corner saying share. So to me, that's a multisensory experience, and it would make open houses. By the way, this is another open house that I went by this weekend, took this picture, and boom, we could have turned that open house into a multisensory experience, and everybody on this call, you could do this weekend. And I'm going to show you how to do it even more on Thursday. Carmine, does that make sense to you? Do you see how we're innovating for, at least in the mortgage space?
Well, it certainly does make sense, and I guess my question for you is, so you're suggesting that most people in the real estate space and the mortgage space are not doing this?
No, nobody is doing this. Okay. Except for people that use our product. So this, everybody in the space does this. Yeah, it's right, all paper, right. And this is a new innovation.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That reinforces what I do, especially when I work with executives, and I give them PowerPoint tools and examples of how to kind of create a better presentation. And they ask me, well, doesn't everybody do this? It's like, no, you're in the top 5%. It sounds to me like the people doing this are in the top 1% doing this. So that's great. Hey, you know what? Okay, this is just for a personal thing, because this has happened in the last few months. A lot of people are telling me or asking me, well, Carmine, if so few people are doing what it is that you're doing, or that you're suggesting. And my response to them is, that's absolutely right. I don't think we'll ever get 100% of people to be doing this, which is okay. If Dave, it's the same in your industry, it's the same in mine. If we just focus on the people who are in the top 10%, who want to be in the top 5% or the top 1%, that's our audience. I can't worry about the other 90%. I'm only concerned about my top 10% of executives who want to communicate in a way that really mesmerizes people. If you're not that interested in it, I can't be interested in you. I can only focus on the people I can focus on.
Yeah, no, it's all about being your best, and if you are, Josh, who was my guest last week, and he's coming on in another week, this is an actual Keller Williams agent. What they said after seeing a Mortgage Coach experience, like I said, 85% of realtors, they're not doing this. There's a very small percent of realtors that are doing it, but they know they should be. Their coach is telling them to do it. So every Mortgage Coach, this is Ed Diaz, a good friend of ours, is really embracing this, driving a multisensory experience. And I guess as we start to net out today's call and really make it actionable, I want to make sure everybody really gets clear that, a huge opportunity over the next 12 months is the millennials. It is the opportunity over the next 5 years. So, the millennials have a different psychology around home ownership. We need to actually walk them through why they should own, owning versus renting. So it's no longer, I think when you look at the boomers, home ownership was the American dream, and all you had to do is help connect their lifestyle to a property, get them a loan. Today's market, you need to do more education. So there was a great blog post that came out within the past couple days, talked about selling to millennials. And so I want to make sure everybody on this call really think about how good can you have this conversation. When it comes to selling to millennials, are you really prepared to have a why by now analysis? Are you really prepared to make the case? You know, I want to thank Garth from Stratmore Group, does a great job of educating our industry. Make sure you check out that blog post. I will put it in the link to the blog post that really talked about what we need to do to sell to millennials. But where are you at? Can you have this conversation? So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this because we're going to cover it in more detail on Thursday with Steve Harney. But I am going to talk about just high level. A modern mortgage experience is where you're story selling with mobile, you're teaching realtors, and you're using Edge to do it. So I'm going to get into this scripting in a lot more detail. Thursday's call will be a training around that. I guess what I'd like everybody to do right now is, you know, really net out your notes from today's call. You know, I hope that you made some connections around multisensory experience. I hope everybody on this call is going to be a better mortgage coach. So, you know, just giving a fee worksheet to your next home buyer is probably not delivering the best educational experience to them. You know, so every Tuesday we do these calls at 9 o'clock, big ideas. Every Thursday, and this Thursday, we will do very hands-on training. So, Jacob, if you're listening to this, let's focus on the rep versus own. Let's focus on creating videos. And let's move the mobile device. Let's put everybody through an exercise of how do I story sell with a mobile device so that not only am I as a loan officer, am I driving that experience, I'm teaching realtors to drive that experience. So we're going to get into that in a lot more detail this Thursday. I want to remind everybody this call is being recorded. It will be posted within the hour. Carmine, you know, I want to make sure as we wrap up today's call, you get some of the final words. I want to make sure everybody, you know, goes out and gets your books. I mean, I'm a huge fan. What are some final thoughts as we wrap up today's call that come to your mind that when you think of loan officers who are helping people make the biggest financial choice of their life and they're counseling both home buyers and realtors, you know, what are some of your final thoughts as we wrap it up?
Yeah, if you want to continue for clients and just the average consumer to see you as a commodity, then just keep doing what you're doing. But if you want to get to that next level, understand that the way you communicate that information is everything. That's going to be the single greatest skill that you can have to help you, you know, really accomplish your dreams and grow your career and grow your business. So anything that you can do to make that communication more impactful, whether it's the video, the mobile, the multisensory experiences, the storytelling, you know, don't just see, and obviously some of the persuasive tricks and techniques I told you about today, you know, start thinking about how am I communicating the value behind my business and the information. Not just I'm giving you information, okay? There's a big difference between here's the information, in that case you're a commodity, or here's the value that I'm bringing. It's subtle, but it's a big difference. And those are my two.
Love it. It's been a fantastic call. It's been a fantastic call. I'm grateful for all the value that you've delivered today. As mortgage coaches, you know, we all have a similar mission and vision. It's to help home buyers and realtors make confident mortgage decisions. Hopefully you'll get more clear on your why after this call. You'll get more passionate, and you will start driving mobile mortgage experiences both at open houses. Anytime you're out in the field, every time you're with a buyer, it's no longer enough that you just quoted a rate. You didn't quote a rate until they moved it, until they, on their own mobile device, clicked on it, zoomed in, they had a multi-sensory experience. That is when you can say, you know what, I delivered education, I delivered value, and I did it in a way that is easily shareable. They can share it with their father-in-law that's loaning on the down payment. They can share it with their financial advisor that's consulting with them, that third advisor that you're not connecting with right now. If you start following what we've shared on this call today, you will win more business, you will get more referrals, and best of all, you're just going to have more confidence because you're doing what's right. You're helping people make informed decisions in a modern way. So, Carmine, really appreciate your time. Thank you. I look forward to our next call today. Everybody, I hope you will be a mortgage coach and share stories and connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And Carmine, I can't wait till our next call together. Well, by the way, one last thing, everybody. If you're a manager on this call or a leader, Carmine does a lot of speaking. You know, he does a lot of coaching. I mean, he's going out to train an executive who's giving a presentation to Congress next week. So, you know, I will be recommending you, Carmine, for Sales Mastery next year. So I'm sure we will be having you speak to our audience more. And if you're on this call and you do sales rallies, make sure you reach out to Carmine and have him come out and, you know, evangelize to your team. Carmine, take care, my friend.
Very good. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.